Hello, and could you let everyone know who you are and what you're working on at the moment?
Sure thing. I'm Arheo, or Peter Nicholson, as is my real name, and I'm a content designer on Imperator Rome.
So, were there worries pre-release that the game was going to be received as negatively as it was?
I wouldn't say so. It was an interesting one. I mean, we didn't expect any of the level of negativity, I suppose, that the game got at launch. We thought we knew what people wanted. But I think, as Johan said earlier today in his presentation at PDXCon, we took the wrong lessons from EU4 and other games. We thought people wanted a direct action game, perhaps more akin to the sort of board gaming style of Europa Universalis, that sort of thing. And they didn't, and they let us know that fairly absolutely, I'd say, in terms of reviews and feedback. And yeah, we've been working at trying to sort of turn that around.
Given the benefit of hindsight, what would you have done differently with development pre-release?
Differently. I think you don't necessarily. It's a hard question to answer. So, I like where we're going now. I like that we are focusing on a simulation that you can prod and poke at and change things. You can interfere with it, but you don't cause the action yourself. I don't think there was ever any chance of it being that before we released, because we thought we knew what people wanted. So in a sense, what happened, the level of dissatisfaction with the game has turned it into what it is now, which is something that personally I think is definitely on the right track and something that I enjoy playing.
Since Cicero released, Steam reviews flipped to mostly positive. What was the feeling within the team when that happened?
It's hard to describe. Vindication, I suppose. We finally got there after all this time. I think it was deserved, I'd like to think. We've put so much into making this what people wanted. We built this with the community. We had this huge period of open beta for the 1.2 release. And we got so much feedback. I think at one point we had nearly 30% of active players on the beta branch, which is practically unheard of for a PDS game. And it really worked.
Are there any areas of the game that you have your eye on for a Cicero-style overhaul?
I don't know. I think there are various aspects of the game that I'd like to overhaul mechanically, which is very much what Cicero was for and what it achieved, I think. But I think that they are things which, to an extent, have always been thought about and always in the pipeline. I'd personally like to take a look at trade. I think that's something that we can do better on these days. And I think whilst the army game, the combat game, and the simulation behind that is probably, in my view, one of the better implementations of combat that we've done. There's a whole load of tactical depth. The map really lends itself to that sort of thing. I think there are things that we can perhaps innovate on in terms of combat.
How do you envisage migratory tribes working in the future?
They're one of my favourite things to play. And I always come up, every time I play them, and I wish I had more time to play than I do, but every time I play a migratory tribe, I think, I need to add this and that and something else, and very slowly we're chipping away at it. In future, I think what migratory tribes suffer from right now is that they're really cool, but they're constrained by the rules that apply to all nations, regardless of who you are. They have to sort of fit into this framework, which really wasn't written for this radically different gameplay of uprooting everything and having no provinces at all and simply just taking your armies wherever you want to go. I think we'd need to rethink some of the restraints that you have on you, like stability threshold for declaring war. That disappeared in, I think it was 1.2, possibly 1.3. But I mean, that's the sort of thing that we need to look at changing, really.
And how do you envisage them working for the AI as well?
That again is another challenge. it's something that I want. I'm thinking about it now. I don't know. The AI using migrations is it requires a lot of AI time, I would imagine. So will they do it in future? I mean, almost certainly, but I would think I want that to be something much bigger than it is, essentially. I mean, the various sort of migration periods and so forth that came after the end of the game would be fantastic to represent in some way when it comes to Imperator. But I think that needs to be the focus of sort of an entire content cycle at some point. So maybe in the future, we'll see.
What's been your favourite feature to work on so far?
I'm going to blow my own horn a little bit here and say that the cities and settlements are the thing that I'm most happy with. I think they just sort of slid into the mechanics of the population simulation that Johan tinkered with and created perfectly, and I think it augmented that infrastructure play style, and I really enjoyed creating that.
How influential is player feedback in the direction the game takes?
I mean, it's instrumental at this point. We thought we could do it without players before release, to an extent. And we do always listen, we always have, and we read everything. If you ever post a thread on the forums or on Reddit, it will get read by one of the Paradox developers, and then that has been the case since I started, certainly. I think we're listening a lot more, and we aim to do that more. 1.2 in the open beta gave this new sort of dialogue between us as developers and the fans playing the game, because they helped us so much to create a balanced and stable version of this quite radical overhaul in such a short time.
Given carte blanche on money and time, where would you bring Imperator?
Ooh, wow. I have always wanted to do a game that covers the migration era, the migration period. So I think I would extend the timeline up to the point where you can have Vandals and Visigoths heading down. I mean, unfeasible perhaps, but if I was given carte blanche, I'd love to look at something like that.
Statesmanship is a new mechanic in Livy. Could you explain how that works?
Absolutely. So statesmanship is a sort of bureaucratic experience, if you will. It sort of dictates how a character is able to utilize their personal attributes like zeal and oratory, martial, and so forth, to do their job. So if you have an officer with 50% statesmanship, then they will be able to utilize half of their assigned skill. If they had 10 martial, they'd be able to contribute 5 of that martial towards their job in their office, so you'd be getting half effect, essentially. Statesmanship itself is earned from having jobs, and you can have that as officers, your 8 primary office positions, as ruler or co-ruler, consort, or you can have that as a tech officer. Now, tech officers won't actually use their statesmanship in their tech, because we tried that and it just didn't really work. It sort of tempered research even further, which is already a point at which people are finding is not going fast enough, perhaps. So this is used as a sort of training position. So you'll train people up to their sort of natural plateau of statesmanship at around 25 to 30. In tech offices, and then you can promote them to a different position, and they'll be able to get their statesmanship up even further and utilize more of their skills in their jobs. And I mean, it sounds like quite a simple mechanic. I'm being attacked by a tree. Quite a simple mechanic, but it adds a really different level of decision making to the character selection for officers. Previously, I think people would just go with whoever had the highest skill, and you would just switch somebody out for essentially no cost when you found somebody with a higher skill. This means you have to actually care about the development of your characters and nurture them a little bit, which ties further into the Great Families rework that we're doing for the Livy patch.
Would you like to expand a bit on the Great Families rework as well?
Absolutely. So Great Families are a bit of a new take on internal politics. We found in Cicero and previous to Cicero that it was very difficult to keep track of characters. Characters didn't have much personality because there were so many of them, and because you just lose them. They belonged to a family with 3 members or something like that, and you'd have up to 20, 30, 40 or 50 families in your country. And it was very difficult to assign any emotional value or any strategic value to a family and its members. With Livy, nation ranks will be associated with number of great families. For example, you'll start out with 2, maybe 3 great families, and as your nation rank increases, so naturally with your size, you'll get more great families. I think it goes up to 5 at the moment, so it's a much smaller maximum number than it ever used to be. And the great families themselves require, tying this back into statesmanship, require a number of jobs. They expect to be given, say, at the start of the game, 3, maybe 4 jobs. And as you expand, as you get more governorships and more available jobs, they will start to expect more and more jobs as you grow larger. And it becomes this interesting balancing act between who is good for a job and who you can actually afford to give a job, and who is experienced at that job, as to whether you go with the guy that's got the greatest skills and the greatest potential, or do you really need to give this to the nephew of somebody else who just happens to be in a family that's going to be disloyal if you don't. And yes, if you don't meet this job quotient, then you'll end up with a very disloyal family. And the heads of great families have a static number of power base split between them, which is divided in a sort of ratio based on their family prestige, meaning that even if you treat a family very badly, it's going to have teeth, and you are going to have to be aware of it, as they'll start contributing all of their combined power base towards civil war.
So, Imperator Dev Clash, will we be seeing that again, and will you be playing in it?
I would love to see it again. I will try and make it happen. And if it does, you will definitely see me playing in it. We will try and make Macedon even longer.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for the interview. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.